welcome to another YouTube video by the FPL Draft Duo. To keep up to date with all draft news, make sure you're following us on all socials and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a video. Let's get into it with a quick look back at last week's waiver. Alex Moreno delivered with 7 points versus Everton and continues to hold a high position in that Villa side. He had 2 key passes, racked up 28 bonus points, giving him 1 bonus point overall and a 7-point return. Looking at his fixtures, he has some lovely fixtures in there. The likes of Sheffield, Fulham, Forest and Luton. All of those 3 fixtures in a row. He's definitely a hold if you have him, and if he's on the waiver, pick him up. Moving on to our punt of the week, and this guy is becoming an FPL Draft Duo favourite. Doughty returns again for the 4th time in a row with 5 points versus Burnley. It doesn't matter if Luton concede, he somehow seems to get points. He is still a decent hold, but they do have some tough fixtures. I wouldn't like Doughty taking up a spot if there's a very good defensive waiver on the waiver. If you want to hold him until Sheffield, that's okay, but he's not going to be able to keep this hot streak going forever. So if there's a good trade on offer, it's probably a good decision. A new section of the YouTube, and we're looking at players where their time is probably up. At one point, Badiashile was a great pickup on the waivers, but with players like Chilwell coming back from injury, his place is up for grabs. They have some tough fixtures in the next 4 and really haven't been that solid at the back all season. Looking at Chelsea's lineup, and a lot of questions have been asked about their defence and their options, mainly about Chilwell. He's a very, very exciting player and we know what he can do in the past in FPL, but how will they line up? Taking a quick look at Chelsea and their options, they could line up in many different ways and have done so this year. Poch usually likes to go 4 at the back but has played 5 at times. If we look at how Chilwell can line up, he has played at wing back in the past and has been very effective. We could see Chilwell play there, but as I said, Poch has preferred a back 4 and we've seen that in the EFL Cup where Chilwell played left back. Caldwell also slipped into centre back and Disasi was effective enough at right back with Gusto's injury. So as we can see, a lot of these players are interchangeable. But what to do with Chilwell? I still think he's a good pickup, but there is the risk that he is rotated. If he gets in consistently, I think it's a no-brainer. So if he's on the waiver and your team is set up and you can afford some benchings, I would pick him up in the hope that he becomes a very high valuable asset. Badiashile on the other hand, yes, he could play in centre back for Disasi or Thiago Silva, but we have seen them two partnered up more often than not this season. If I was a Badiashile owner, I wouldn't be holding on, I'd be looking to upgrade, and we have some great waivers that he could be transferred out for. Another player that we had high hopes for but ultimately failed to live up to his expectations is Jacob Ramsey. He always seems like a great pick when he's coming back from injury, but he is just too injury prone and has got re-injured again, as well as Villa having some very good options in that midfield. Especially Kamara, who's come back and seems like a staple in that team all season. And then you have the likes of Bailey and Diaby, who are also fighting for positions. Unfortunately, Ramsey's a drop because his injury history and the rotation possibility is not enough to justify his place in the team. Each week we answer burning questions. If you want your question answered, please send it in to us on Instagram or on Twitter. We answer these in depth on our podcast and try to go into as much detail as possible to help players with trades and any dilemmas they have in the draft. Here is one question that we went in detail on this week. It was a very important question about AFCON and the Asian Cup players, including Son, Kudos and Jackson. So if you have any of these players or any players that might be playing in their position, maybe go give it a listen, it might help you this week. And on to the main section of the video, which is our waiver suggestions. If you want more in detail waiver suggestions with a couple more 1 week punts, listen to this week's podcast where we give a couple of more waiver suggestions. But here are the best ones for this week. Martinez should make his return for Manchester United next week, and if not, it will be game week 23 against West Ham. Now, although Martinez is not a very good aerial threat, he will be very highly available on the waivers. Erik ten Hag has worked with him before, so I think he'll be preferred at centre back, pairing Varane, as Johnny Evans has been very poor in the last couple of game weeks. He might be more highly available than the likes of Dalot and Shaw for this very good run of fixtures that United have. Out of their next 8 games, only 2 of them aren't ranked 2 on the FDR. Wolves are without Hee-Chan, although they did look good at the weekend. West Ham are also struggling for goals, but Kudos will be back for game week 23. After that, United have the likes of Luton, Fulham, Everton and Sheffield within 5 game weeks. So having Martinez and hoping he might get 1 or 2 clean sheets before that very nice run could be a great option. If you want to go more attacking, the likes of Shaw, if he's available, I would highly recommend going for him as he should be back for game week 22. Moving up the list, Van Hecke is another great option who we mentioned previously. He seems like a stalwart in that Brighton team and they've just kept 2 clean sheets in a row. This more solid Brighton team might mean more clean sheets, and the run of fixtures they have, it's very possible. They play the likes of Palace, who have been struggling for goals, Sheffield, Everton, Fulham and Forest up until game week 28. He should be relatively available on the waivers and had a very good chance at a header at the weekend, so could have returned even more. He's going to be a nice pickup for the next 6 game weeks, and you can start him in about 4 or 5 of those games without worrying about it. Third on our list is a player that has relatively low availability but some fantastic fixtures up until game week 32. Newcastle have been poor recently in defence, but a lot of those games that are ranked 2 on the FDR are at home. There has been loads of changes in Newcastle and many players have been whispered to leave the club, but Botman isn't one of them. Hopefully Trippier can stay and that back 4 is solidified even more. Newcastle might struggle defensively if the likes of Bruno is sold, but if there's relatively low change and people are afraid of holding on to Botman, I think he could be a fantastic pickup. You essentially can have a great defender for the rest of the season with some aerial threat involved. The number 1 defender on the list this week is Andy Robertson. He has recovered from his shoulder injury and might even feature this week in the EFL Cup. If not, he should be back for Chelsea and definitely back for Arsenal. Although they are tough fixtures, Robertson has the most assists from any defender in the Premier League. He's on some corners and some set pieces, so it doesn't matter who he's playing, he's good enough to start. After those 2 tough fixtures, they have 4 fantastic fixtures in a row: Burnley, Brentford, Luton and Forest. So if Robertson is on your waiver, pick him up immediately. Even try and get a trade over the line. I think he's going to be a season-long hold and hopefully shows better form than he did prior to his injury. So that's our back 4 for this week, and it actually looks solid enough on paper. If we get into the midfielders for this week, another FPL duo fan favourite is Tomori. The reason we love Tomori is when he has a good fixture, he usually delivers, and he has one this weekend. Fulham away, and if you look at his heat map, he's all over the place. Tomori loves to have late runs into the box and he's a very attacking player. He might be on the waiver because he was injured previously but played 90 minutes in the last game week. If he is, he could be a great 1 week punt. The issue with Tomori is that he has some tough fixtures coming up, so if you wanted to hold him through those tough ones and ride it out, it could be a good option, but I'd be looking at him for Fulham and then possibly upgrading. He might be the key to Everton getting back on track as they have been poor in the attacking sense over the last couple of weeks. He might be that bright spark that they need. Tomori is also very good trade fodder, and if he does return against Fulham, his value will be high, and if you don't want him for them tough fixtures, you can get a trade over the line and maybe upgrade to someone who has slightly better fixtures or might be in better form. A bit of a longer term hold here, and we're looking at Diaz of Sheffield. He put in a very good performance at the weekend and so did Sheffield. If we look at their stats, they outplayed West Ham and had more possession, shots and shots on target. Diaz himself had very good stats, racked up 4 shots, 2 on target and even missed a big chance. The biggest asset Diaz has is he's playing slightly out of position. He's taking up a left wing position and has come central at times against West Ham. If he continues to do this and comes even more central, he could be a gem. The problem is that he's playing for Sheffield, and although they did play well against West Ham, they have some tough fixtures coming up and he might be a bit of a spark to turn their season around, but how good will he be is the question. The way I see Diaz is he is a pick and stick player. Sheffield played very much so on the counter attack last weekend and he got some joy through this. That's good and bad in a way because Diaz could start against any team, and if they continue to play that type of play, he might get returns. The issue here is that if you have a player with a better fixture, you're going to want to start them. If you have a space in your 4th or 5th choice midfielder in a larger size league, he's going to be a good pickup. And you can just play him them good fixtures, but he could return at any time. It's always good to have a player playing slightly out of position, and I think you should take advantage of this if you are looking for a new midfielder. If he didn't play for Sheffield, he'd be a fantastic pick. He's still a decent option going forward. He's picked up 3 goals and 2 assists in that time. He's played way better, as have United, over the last 3 or 4 game weeks, and I think Garnacho has been instrumental to this. The issue with Garnacho is there is some players coming back from injury. Casemiro's in line to have a start in game week 22, and Mount is getting closer. I'd fear that this does reduce his minutes slightly, but over the next 8 game weeks, he's going to be a great pickup. If he's on your waiver, he's probably going to be an improvement to some of your midfielders, and if he continues to play roughly 70 to 80 minutes, he's going to be a great pick. Top of our list is Tavernier, and although he might have low availability, if he's available, pick him up. Bournemouth have an insane run of fixtures from now until game week 32, with 6 games in a row that you can start and expect returns from some of your players. Tavernier is going to be top of that list for Bournemouth, but if you can't have him, Christie's also a decent option who played good against Liverpool and is playing in that number 10 role all season long. Tavernier is on set pieces, and that will be instrumental to Bournemouth doing well. The likes of Zabarni, Senesi and Solanke will all be targeted in the air, and Tavernier hopefully will be putting the ball on their head. If he is taken in your leagues, he might be a good player to get over the line before people see all of those fixtures from 27 to 32. I'd be picking him up over all of these players just because he has more routes to points and is probably more nailed than the likes of Garnacho. These 4 midfielders make it into our team of the week, and it's lining up like an old school 4-4-2 with some random inclusions in there. I wonder how this team would do in the Premier League. Moving on to our forwards, and Danny Ings has probably played his way into the West Ham team for game week 22. Although Kudos is back, Ings played very well last game week, won a penalty and held up the ball very well. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be a 1-week punt, but it's going to be a nice one as they're playing Bournemouth at home and will probably want to bounce back very quickly from that 2-2 draw against Sheffield. Moving on to a more consistent player, and Adebayo has started the last 6 games for Luton. He's also scored 5 goals this season, and it's probably a bit more of a long-term hold, although you probably don't want to start him. They only have 1 good fixture in the next 5, but they do look to that aerial threat of Adebayo, and him and Doughty have been a good pairing in the past. Maybe if you need a striker, he could be started and hope for a return. But if you were going long term, I would go Adebayo. If you have short term goals, Ings might be a good punt for this week. Top of our list, if he wasn't picked last week, Werner is a great pick. As you can see in my 12 manager league, the striker options are very poor. I talked about it in the podcast. Bennett and McBurney are options, but you're never realistically going to start them. Werner is going to be better than all of these players, even if he is going to get rotated. Looking at his heat map, he played left wing last weekend, and unfortunately a certain Son will probably come back and take his spot. I would be worried if he was your only playing striker, as it's inevitable he's going to get rotated when Son does return. Looking at the odds for the Asian Cup, where Son is currently playing in, South Korea are 9-2. Even if they don't win it and get to the semi-finals, there is a likelihood that Son is gone until game week 26. So you can probably hold Werner until then and not worry too much. When he comes back, he is going to be an issue, but hopefully you have racked up enough points and there's some other waiver options by then. He goes up top for our 11 waivers of the week. Danny Ings makes the bench and hopefully can make an impact against Bournemouth. It's a very random team, but that's what we love about the draft. 3 top picks for this week are Robertson, Tavernier, and up top is Werner. Hopefully this team can score very high this weekend and you can get a W in your league. As always, we appreciate the support on the YouTube podcast and all our social media greatly. If you're not following already, please hit that button. We really appreciate it. Draft Duo out.